And get started here. Welcome, everyone. First thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I'm not sure if everyone has copies. I think we got mailed copies of the meeting. I'm not sure that they're in front of you unless you brought them with, but.
I move approval of the minutes from the August 16th meeting.
Thank you. Get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Accreditation update. So Justin.
I get to start right away. So I'll run through a couple things quick. We are 56 days away from our deadline, and we are in very good shape. We recently completed our performance management quality improvement plan, which the managers all had a chance to review and go over goals and strategies to achieve those goals. And then we sent it to staff for feedback. So that is now live. We are now in our new quality improvement plan. We're finishing our workforce development plan by next week. Our all-staff survey was just finished, and also our core competency assessment was finished. So many things in the works. Everything is in an effort to get it kind of caught up before our winter deadline here. So things are looking good, and we'll work on our chip come January, February. So that's all I got. But yeah, we're in good shape.
I think the last time that we met, there was a meeting that was going to be in Detroit Lakes, and you were going to do some additional planning. How did that go?
That one ended up actually being canceled. And then we had rescheduled another one to be hosted at our facility, and then that one also got canceled. There was an emergency with some people. So we are still working on planning that one. We do have the similar goals, but as far as using the computer program that they wanted to, that's kind of been on hold for now.
Okay, gotcha. Any other questions for Justin? Okay. All right, good luck.
Thank
Let the countdown continue.
Getting there.
All right, breast cancer awareness. I'm not sure who's Larry.
Yes.
Hey, Larry.
Good afternoon. Hello. As you're aware, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this is an opportunity to help spread the word about taking steps to detect breast cancer early. Female breast cancer represents 15.2% of all new cancers in the United States, and 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. We encourage women to discuss screening of breast cancer with their healthcare provider. And it's important to keep in mind that there are a variety of reasons why women choose not to be screened, one in which is they don't have the financial resources to do so. And that's where Women's Way comes in. Our Women's Way program that is housed at Fargo-Cass Public Health can help provide financial assistance for cervical and breast cancer screenings for eligible North Dakota women. And this afternoon, Women's Way will be hosting a community event at Fargo-Cass Public Health at 2 o'clock in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. There'll be a panel of guest speakers, including the Mayor of Fargo will be speaking. Everybody on the board and everybody in the community is welcome to attend.
Excellent. Thank you, Larry. Any other comments or questions for Larry? Okay. Budget, Melissa.
Hello. I'm just going to start off right with the revenues. There's not a lot to report, except since our last meeting, we've had 2 new grants we've received and some additional funding in family planning. So for family planning, we'll be doing a budget adjustment to what you see there, coming up pretty quick here. I think it's on the next commission agenda, actually. That money is from end of September through end of March. It was $73,000, and it's going to be for supplies and marketing for family planning for the underinsured and uninsured clients. Try to increase our numbers there. And then in that grant section, you can see the last 2 items that have been added: Public Health Network Opioid Response and North Dakota Comprehensive Cancer Control. The opioid response money is to help pay mostly for Robin's time, and that is only from September to the end of November, so it's a very quick little grant they managed to give us, so that's good. And then the North Dakota Comprehensive Cancer Control is, it was about $8,500, I think. Some of it we'll spend this year, some of it in the beginning of next year. And that's to provide physical activity training for licensed childcares. So that's our new money. Nothing else really new to report, other than at the end of September last year, we were at almost 57% spent revenue, and pretty much right on track for this year. And then over to the expense side, nothing really new there at all. Last year at this point, we're at 74%. This year we're at 71%, so we're in better shape going into the final 3 months of the year with the numbers where we're at today. So, any questions?
Well, you had mentioned back in May that there was 2 different grants being applied for. So are those 2 new ones that you just mentioned, or are there still other ones in the pipeline?
Not sure if I remember exactly which ones we were applying for at the time. There's been lots of new money coming in, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything outstanding that you're waiting for responses on?
I don't think so, not that
Okay.
I'm aware of. Nope.
Chad, you got?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can you touch on the numbers that are like 546%
Yes,
above projections? I'm guessing that's where your marketing money is going to come supplement that, but
yeah, I had written down some of these. Most of these I've talked about in previous meetings already, but I did make some notes for today. The first one, let's see, it's hard to read here with my bifocals. Give me a second. So let's see. Vet services, I think, is the first one at 281% expenditures. That is money we get. We receive donations, and at the same time, we expend those monies on vet services at the Gladys Ray Shelter. So you'll see the revenue come in on the other side also. So hard to budget for that because we never know what those numbers are going to be. They change from year to year. The marketing is all in tobacco-related services for the year. We got lots of grant money to spend in tobacco, so that's where that's going. The mowing services, same thing as the vets services, kind of the revenue comes in that matches those expenses, so they offset. The other one I had was building repairs. That was a high number. That's due to the shelter, expenses there. Well, it's a very old building, which needs constant care, so we're hoping some things change in the future on that, but working on it. And let's see, any other ones you were looking at?
the big ticket one was the 550.
Yeah, that's just from the marketing of the tobacco grant that we got this year. And the budget didn't get adjusted quite correctly, I think.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for Melissa? Okay. Thanks, Melissa. All right. So next we have a presentation on electronic cigarettes, and certainly this has been in the media quite a bit, so I appreciate you bringing the information forward and looking forward to learning more about this. So.
Just a few words before the presentation. As you're aware, the mission of Fargo-Cass Public Health is to prevent disease and injury, promote wellness, and protect community health. That is why the issue of electronic cigarettes is so important. There's been a great deal of information in the media, as Chelsea has said, in other venues regarding electronic cigarettes. That's why we thought it'd be important to have a presentation, because some of the information's accurate, some maybe not so much, so we really wanted to pull some people together to present. We have our 2 tobacco coordinators here that are going to each present. Our health officer is going to present, and then someone from the North Dakota Department of Health is going to share up-to-date information and why using electronic cigarettes is a public health concern. Melissa Markegard is the first one to present.
Thank you, Larry. So what you see before you is my presentation that I present to parents, students, the look of it. So that's why it's so bright. So I apologize. Mine's way brighter than everybody else's. So really what we want you to remember, especially with what's happening now in our current vaping epidemic, what we're seeing is, what we want you to remember is that no matter what your age is, flavors are making it easy to hit, the devices are making it very easy to hide, and the nicotine content is making it incredibly hard to quit. And so that's kind of our new, that's what we've always said for youth, but because of what we're seeing in our nation right now and how it's affecting adults as well, we've kind of had to shift how we at Public Health talk about vaping and who we specifically talk about it to, because of the huge what's happening in the media right now. So the evolution of the e-cigarettes. So typically when I talk to kids, they call them vapes or Juuls. Very rarely are they calling them e-cigarettes anymore. And I included Ns because in legal terms, a lot of times what's happening is legally they're calling them Ns, or electronic nicotine delivery systems, because big tobacco and the tobacco industry itself, all of these devices keep being created, and so the hope is that a device isn't created that doesn't fall under our law. That's the hope, is that everything that continues to be created falls under what we currently have on the books as far as laws go. So e-cigarettes are made up of four main chemicals: propylene glycol, glycerin, nicotine, and flavorings. And right now there's over 15,000 different flavorings. It is not just a harmless water vapor. If you've heard that, that is not the case. When you mix all those chemicals together, you don't get H2O on the other side. And then we have very much shifted to it is not safer for anyone. So typically we were saying it's not safer for youth because it's illegal for you, and then talk about it in that way. Right now we are saying not safer for anyone. What's happening is with e-cigarettes or vape devices, when that is made into an aerosol, it creates what's called nanoparticles, or extremely small particles that are getting deeper and deeper into the lungs. And so we really need to we don't know the long-term health effects of that. And so as a health department, as public health, we really have to be cautionary in how we talk about vaping products in general. So nicotine affects the brain and the body. And this is the slide that I talk to kids about. So your brain is developing until you are around age 25. They are saying males, it's pushing it further and further out, it seems. So now males is around 27, which maybe males just, maybe it never stops developing. I don't know. But anyway, the brain develops until at least age 25, and nicotine actually changes how your brain is formed. And so it's the part responsible for attention and learning. It's the part responsible for decision making, addiction, the permanent lowering of impulse control. And when you talk to kids about whether they vape or they know someone who vapes, and that's typically who I'm talking to about their usage is youth. So when you ask them about that and say, if you're a vapor, or if you have a friend who is, and you knew them before they started vaping, have you noticed this stuff now that they have been vaping for a long time? And the majority of the time they'll nod their head, admittedly, because I think they have seen a change in their friends' attention. If you talk to parents about their kids who have been vaping for a period of time, they definitely notice that attention and learning, that impulse control, that is being affected by the nicotine in your brain. The nicotine also affects our body. So the easy one is blood vessels constrict and raises our blood pressure. The second one is called NICSIC. NICSIC is a term that youth have coined because the definition that I actually have up there is from the Urban Dictionary. So youth, it's where it came from. And NICSIC is actually nicotine poisoning. But they have given it the term NICSIC because that doesn't sound nearly as bad or as dangerous as nicotine poisoning. And even Urban Dictionary admits this may make you want to quit juuling, but you'll probably just do it again tomorrow. And even when you point that out to youth, and the definition of NICSIC in Urban Dictionary specifically talks about addiction. And they can see it. I read the sentence, and then I say, what does that mean? What does that sentence actually mean? And they always say, well, that means you're addicted. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So nicotine really affects the brain and the body pretty significantly. And then we'll talk the restrictions. So that's the other part of vaping products that is quite challenging because there are very few restrictions. And so a lot of times they are touted, not necessarily marketed now. I think in the recent past, they were marketed as a cessation aid. Right now, they are not allowed to do that because they are not approved as a cessation device. And I think Preston, our other tobacco coordinator, is going to talk more about cessation. But then other restrictions, there are unlimited flavors and unlimited nicotine levels. Recent flavor bans in states are Michigan, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Washington. I don't know of any others. I just updated this on Monday. So there's a potential that there are other states that have added flavor bans. I don't think so, but we're at the 5 that have done either a flavor ban or an emergency flavor ban in their state. Advertising in media, there's very few restrictions on that as well. So you will hear vaping or e-cigarette ads on the radio. You will see commercials on TV. And what's really interesting to me is this hot pink ad that you see that says smoking evolved, that's actually one of the very first Juul ads that was ever created. And Juul says they don't market to kids, but when I go and I show this ad to kids, they say it looks like I don't tell them that it's a Juul ad initially, and they say it looks like she's very young, she's a teenager like us, she's marketing clothes, she's marketing maybe makeup or hair, magazines, something like that. And then I say, well, it's actually a Juul ad, but Juul says they don't market to kids. Does that seem truthful? No, it is not truthful. And so big tobacco with cigarettes and chewing tobacco, they cannot market like this. There are very heavy restrictions on them. They can't have ads on the radio. They can't have commercials on TV. But the other night, laying in bed before I fell asleep, there was a e-cigarette commercial, and it looked very similar to this hot pink ad. And so it's interesting what the industry is being allowed to do with that as well. And then effective policy change. So there are some things that could happen that would be effective as far as restrictions go. We're waiting for the federal government to make other tobacco restrictions, but there are things that states can do, cities can do that they are doing. So raising the price of tobacco or raising the tax. The flavor bans that we're seeing in different states, and then raising the purchase age to 21 is another pretty effective policy change. And then what are you guys looking for? Okay, so there's all these vaping devices, and we are seeing vaping devices used to be pretty big, a huge plume. What we're seeing is a gravitation towards devices that are easy to hide and conceal. And so parents are always asking, what are we looking for exactly? Because I don't know, and this is changing so quickly. And so you need to look for, are there changes in your kids' behavior, increased mood swings, irritability, anxiety? Are they suffering from frequent headaches or nausea? We see that, we hear about that a lot from schools, is kids are having a lot of headaches and a lot of nausea. So really, if they're having headaches or nausea, they're either in nicotine withdrawal or they're getting too much nicotine. It's the same characteristics. And then are there sweet or fruity smells coming from behind closed doors? It might actually be nicotine or vape flavors that you're smelling. And these are some of the vapes that we have seen. The ones that are being held in the hand, that's my hand. So those are our vapes that we have at the office that we have seen and purchased based on hearing from youth what's being used, or from school resource officers of what they're confiscating. And then we purchase new ones so we can show parents, school resource officers, teachers, all of that. And then one more, are there school supplies or tech products? that you don't recognize in backpacks or rooms, or chargers, vials, different eye drop bottles that you just don't recognize. A lot of times it's going to be worth taking a closer look to make sure you actually know what you're looking for. Because this is a backpack. We took this picture in our office, and there are, I should remember, 1, 2, 3, there's like 7 or 8 vape products in that picture with the backpack, which they're challenging to spot because they are being created to be discreet. So that is it for my presentation. I think we're going to take questions at the end, correct, Larry?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
All right, well, I get set up. I'm Heidi Lako Adamson, I'm the health officer. Suppose I should start the slides, huh? So, I'm gonna talk about vaping lung injury. And I couldn't do my presentation till the very end because there's so much stuff coming out. And in fact, October 8th was the last time CDC came out with something. But in fact, this morning, I just read another article from the CDC. So I really kind of pared down what I was going to include. I only went from the CDC and the New England Journal of Medicine because you can find a lot of stuff online that may not be true about this vaping lung injury because it is so new and we're just seeing it. And I think we're just now recognizing it. I think it was happening before, but now we're seeing it's a real entity and we can't explain what these people are going through. So just a few statistics just to show you what actually is going on. 1,299 confirmed injury cases associated with vaping in the US, and that's confirmed. And now, vaping lung injury is a diagnosis of exclusion. So if they already have COPD and they go in for a COPD exacerbation, it could be because of their vaping, but we'll call it a COPD exacerbation and not a vaping lung injury because they've got something else that could possibly explain it. Or they might get pneumonia on top of it or something like that. So I think this number is probably much higher, but we just can't call it that because we don't have any lab test or any specific entity that we can call actually vaping lung injury. And I've got some pictures to show you, and they're really impressive, but it manifests in many different ways. And of those almost 1,300 people, they had complete histories and stuff of 573 of them. And there was a majority that did use THC oils. And now the oils that they're putting in these vaping devices becomes superheated and then becomes these tiny nanoparticles, and it gets into the deepest alveoli, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. And then it condenses again when it cools down, and now you've got oil in your lung. And oil and water don't mix. And not that we have a lot of water in our lung, but it coats those air transferring vessels with oil, so then you can't absorb oxygen. Some of them about 13% have said, nope, I didn't use any THC. They tested negative for THC when they did drug tests on them in the hospital. So it is not just illegal THC that's causing this. We do think it is the nicotine and flavorings that people are using that does cause some of this. So it's not just all black market stuff like it has been suggested. So they are finding that, yes, a lot of them are black market because we don't know what's in that, but it is other nicotine-containing products that you can buy in a regular store. Lots of males that do it, and 80% of the people are less than 35, but we've got that 20% that is greater than 35, and we've had deaths up to 75 years old. So it's not just the young, it's everyone. So the CDC is just recommending no one use vaping because this is very dangerous. You could lose your life. And it's kind of scary, actually. There have been 26 deaths thus far. I think that number is far greater as well, just because of we don't know why they died or they died from pneumonia, but they actually had an injury from vaping first and then ended up intubating and getting pneumonia and stuff in the hospital. So there's lots of reasons for it. And not every state has been keeping track of this very well either. We've got a lot of small towns out there that, you know, Ethel just died, you know. So this is the what I was talking about, these little alveoli. They're the little air sacs that you have capillaries that kind of sit around it, and then that's where you absorb oxygen from, and that's where you exchange CO2 and get rid of that and absorb your oxygen. And that's what's getting injured, and it's causing destruction of those. And yep, if you're young, you can probably, you know, get better from this and live a full life. But when you get older and you've got all this scarring and now you keep vaping or keep smoking, it's going to cause severe lung injury and you're going to end up dying from it. So it's no better than smoking. And then THC and CBD, we don't know what's in those products either and how strong they are. And the actual THC and CBD might be injuring the lung as well. I mean, you're inhaling a foreign substance. Come on. You don't know what that's going to do to your lungs. So the bottom there is just many different x-rays of vaping lung injury. So you can see that, you know, it should look nice and black and with just a few vessels and stuff, but we're seeing all this kind of, well, I call it schmutz because I'm an ER doc. It's the technical term. But opacifications where there's fluid or there's injury to the lung, and that area is not absorbing oxygen and exchanging CO2 for you. And that's why people end up in the ICU with a tube down their throat breathing for them. The symptoms are kind of nonspecific. It's cough, shortness of breath, chest pain, so they can kind of come in with anything. But about 70% of them actually have abdominal symptoms, and they don't know why. So they'll have diarrhea, fatigue, bellyache, and it'll precede their lung symptoms. So it's very, very strange. I don't know if it's, you know, the high nicotine or the high THC that's causing the abdominal symptoms. I'm not sure. We need a lot more research on it. And some will have fatigue, fever, and even weight loss. And it can happen from up to a couple of days after you vape or a couple of weeks. And usually it's a rule out kind of diagnosis, so they have to have no infection and things like that. So this is a 20-year-old, and again, the white is bad and the black is better. But he had kind of these dependent consolidations and stuff, and it was because of vaping. He was intubated for a couple days in the ICU, did get better, and this did resolve pretty well. He had some scarring, but as soon as he stopped vaping, all this went away. So it's got to be connected, you know. Same with this lady, 19-year-old female, has this kind of diffuse patchy stuff. Didn't end up intubated, but as soon as she stopped vaping, again, it went away. They have been trying steroids, but they're not sure if that really works because steroids will decrease inflammation, but it might be just that they stopped vaping, so it's getting better. So they're going to probably have to do some trials where somebody gets steroids and somebody doesn't, see if they improve. Another one, 35-year-old male, almost lost his life from this, and it doesn't even look that bad, but you see that it's kind of more of a grayish looking, really not absorbing much oxygen from any of that area, and he could have lost his life. And another one, and it was a 49-year-old, and they found cobalt in her vape pen. She wasn't doing THC oil or anything like that. She was just doing straight nicotine, and her pen had cobalt in it, and I don't know why. It didn't tell me. This was from the New England Journal of Medicine. And as soon as she stopped vaping, all this injury went away. So what do we need to do? We really do need to do some more research, but in the meantime, we need to make sure that people aren't vaping, and so we don't have these injuries. It's not going to stop completely because we can't ask people to stop cold turkey, but hopefully cessation can help. And we got to find a treatment for this because, as you know, I mean, even if it's illegal, people are going to do it. So we got to do some more research so we have a good treatment and these people aren't losing their lives. And maybe we need to make some laws against at least some of the flavors and things like that, so they're not so appealing to our young folks and they get addicted to it. Because I hate to see the 57-year-old person running around Target with their oxygen on because they've been smoking their entire life. It's just, that's kind of sad. So CDC is recommending don't vape. I mean, that's it. We don't know what's causing all this. We have some theories. We'll try to keep you up to date, but yeah, we don't want to kill any more people doing this, so. Which one's yours? This one? Board of Health? This one?
Yeah.
This one?
Oh, this
Oh, this one?
Hi, my name is Preston Niesemeyer. I'm also a tobacco coordinator at FargoCast Public Health. I'm going to talk today a little bit what we have done at FargoCast Public Health to help prevent youth access to nicotine products or tobacco products, as well as what you can do if someone is addicted to nicotine products. So over the couple years since I've been at FargoCast Public Health, we've changed a couple ordinances. The first one that we came into, we put an ordinance against outlawing mobile vending products or mobile vending for tobacco products. This came up we got an email about a potential of this coming. We didn't want like vendors to put up little smoke shops in parking lots that would give easier access to youth, because there's not going to be as much of a I guess police surrounding of that, or having them putting them in by food trucks or at football games or anything like that. So we wanted to put a nix to that, and we're really proud of that was passed. The next one that we did was we required, most recently, state licensing required to sell electronic cigarettes. Before this, and across the state, other than some cities, vendors don't need a tobacco license to sell a product that contains nicotine that they can inhale in their cities. So we passed an ordinance requiring state licensing to help them put them under the same umbrella as tobacco products. And currently, right now, we're working on adding a $500 administrative penalty to each offense if sold to minors. This is when, like if we're doing tobacco compliance checks, and with this $500 administration penalty, suspensions and probations will still remain. So currently, if a business gets caught selling a tobacco product to a minor, the first offense, they go on a 1-year probation. The second offense in that same year, they'll get their licenses suspended for 3 days. And if there's a subsequent offense, it's 10 days. Fourth offense would be a 30-day suspension of their tobacco license. So with this, we want to add another $500 penalty to the business. So I just want to briefly talk a little bit about our tobacco compliance check program. We do this with the assistance of local law enforcement in Fargo and West Fargo, and then Cass County we now do twice a year, but in the past we only did once. And generally we do this about 4 times a year and twice a year in Cass County, like I mentioned. Now we also do check, we check for sales of tobacco products, including e-cigarettes. With that ordinance change that we did requiring state licensing to sell electronic products, that's helped clean up any kind of confusion, because if a business sold an electronic cigarette to a minor, well, you can't suspend a license that they didn't have. With our pass rates, with our compliance checks, it's approximately about 94%, and that includes Fargo, West Fargo, and Cass County. And since that, we've had not have a vape shop failed. So they're doing their job. They're checking their IDs. Some businesses mentioned they do 3 points of checks when they enter the door, when they're looking at the product, and when they sell. And like I mentioned earlier, we're currently working with the city attorney to add that $500 penalty for each violation if they do sell to minors. And with these tobacco compliance checks, we send in youth and we send in 2 minors with their actual IDs, and we make sure they adjust their age, no facial hair, and so they look like they're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. Now, for like a little bit for cessation, like Melissa mentioned, I'll talk about. So the ones here, patches, gum, lozenges, inhaler, nasal spray, Chantix, and Wellbutrin, those are what are going to be your FDA-approved nicotine replacement therapy. Vaping products are not approved cessation device. We're recommending complete vaping avoidance. So with people who are vaping, we probably want them to start using some of these FDA approved nicotine replacement therapy. Another program that we have at Fargo-Cass Public Health is we call the Breakaway from Nicotine program. We call it BAN for short. This is a comprehensive treatment program offered there. So with this, we provide nicotine replacement therapy, patches, gum, or lozenges. We generally do a combination of those, as well as counseling for them. And they'll come and see us, and they'll come back every 2 to 4 weeks until eventually they graduate out of the program. One reason this is so beneficial is not everyone has a phone, or it's just easier for them to have, they like that one-on-one interaction other than having telecounseling that they do through some quit lines. This is especially beneficial through people, and a lot of our clients were people who are experiencing behavioral health issues, and also Melissa will go in with in-home nursing when they go see their clients, or people who have transportation issues. We do internal referrals given at Fargo-Cass Public Health, as well as we present on this program when we do community presentations. And this is, like I mentioned, free nicotine replacement therapy for up to 1 year with patches, gum, and lozenges. Another big one that we also advocate for is ND Quits. This is the cessation assistance to North Dakota residents where they also provide free nicotine replacement therapy. In their program, they provide up to 8 weeks of nicotine replacement therapy. I believe 8 weeks up to twice a year. This is phone and email counseling. And I just provided the number for, and it's 1-800-QUIT NOW for ND Quits. Thank you.
And my name is Brenton Niesmeyer. We may look alike. We're actually brothers 1 year apart. So just get that done with now. And I work for the North Dakota Department of Health, Division of Disease Control. My office is based in Fargo, but I work out of the state office. This is just a little update. The numbers, North Dakota, I just looked at it this morning, so sorry it's not the most updated now, but we actually have 7 males now and 6 females, so the case count did go up just by 1, but we update our numbers every Thursday. So I just wanted to show you where our cases are located, and like Dr. Leko had said, most of our cases are located in those towns and cities with major health systems like Sanford, Altru, Mid-Dakota, Mercy out in Williston. So the small towns aren't reporting, but we do know that they probably do exist in those small town health systems. Won't go too much into depth here, but just reinforce what Dr. Leko had said, about 1,299 cases of lung injury. It's actually called EVALI now, or e-cigarette or vaping associated lung injury. The CDC just came out with that term this week. And that's just a listing of the states that deaths have occurred. Minnesota just confirmed 2 more deaths this week, so their number is up to 3. So these numbers are changing daily. It's just hard to get a grasp on it. but just wanted to show that. And then here again, just the data on the THC products, and that the CDC continues to recommend people consider refraining from using e-cigarette or vaping products that contain nicotine. And then this is from the latest CDC call. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. 17-year-old did die, the youngest patient to expire so far. Alaska is the only state that has not reported a case. They are developing an ICD-10 code for this condition and working on nomenclature, so the nomenclature is probably out with EVALI, but they are working on developing an ICD-10 code, which will make it a lot easier for states or the disease control, because we can use our syndromic surveillance system, and that pulls all the ICD-10 codes from various health systems, so then we can have a better grasp, even when these conditions aren't being reported to us, because unlike measles or chickenpox or the flu, there's no associated lab that can be done. It's a provider report that needs to be given to us, and sometimes those fall to the wayside. Many people are being rehospitalized or reoccurring. We'll talk about that in a second with what our job is, or my job. And then this season, especially now, there's a symptom overlap with influenza. So just be concerned that some of these symptoms may look alike and can't be part of disease control or the health department, and not recommend people to get their flu vaccine. But providers just need to test for flu when they are thinking of using this diagnosis. So the investigation process, it is kind of cumbersome and kind of hard because there isn't an associated condition or lab that can be determined, so we can't use electronic lab reporting, which many of our health systems use. The case is reported by telephone or online to the North Dakota Department of Health. WDAY did an article last week with that North High student who was recently hospitalized, and we pick up on those articles as well and look in our system to see whether or not those have been reported to us. So then if they haven't been reported, then we reach out to the health system and say, hey, do you guys want to report this? Cases generally are preliminary when they're given to us, and then assigned a disposition. I didn't go into it, or didn't put it, but based on the information given in the following guidelines given by the CDC, so they can either be confirmed, probable, or suspect. And then that's what our job is as a health department. We have this good access to health systems, and we work really well with All True Trinity, Sanford, Essentia, and we have online or EMR access to many of their health systems. We have to request their charts, but they release those charts to us either through electronically or through fax, and then we review them. We're reviewing all labs. We're reviewing to make sure that they did a respiratory panel, they did an influenza panel. They're looking for Legionella in the urine. We're looking at those CXRs and those other x-rays just to make sure that they have that ground glass opacities and other associated conditions. And then we're noting all of this just because CDC has a quite lengthy CRF that we have to fill out. So we're noting all this. It's all de-identified. So any of the information that we note is just assigned a random number based on the CDC, but we have to get all of this information in order to assign that final disposition of confirmed, probable, or even sometimes, since we have that self-reporting tool, we get these online access and we find out that they weren't a case, that the person had just reported something just to report something. And then sometimes we do follow back up with the provider just to talk to the provider about it, to see, hey, are you thinking this, or do you have another diagnosis? Because like Dr. Lako had said, they have to definitively rule out any infectious disease, and those antibiotics have had to have been proven to fail or not work over the course of their lung injury. And that is it for me. So I guess sit down and then you guys can ask your questions.
And that concludes the presentation.
Questions, Robin?
I'm going to put Melissa on the spot. I have a couple questions for you. Just a little bit of background. She came and presented to my board yesterday at the Boys and Girls Club, and that was very eye-opening for me. And I'm particularly concerned with how this is impacting our youth. I will say a couple of things that struck me. The discrete products are there to hide them. And the only purpose that anybody has to hide them is if they are illegally vaping. And so it finally struck me, okay, I get the marketing piece now. With the wearables and the hidden pockets and things like that, they are targeting kids. That became very clear to me yesterday. Will you speak to two things you talked about yesterday?
Sure.
One was how you can't control, or you smokers know how many cigarettes they smoke a day, but the vaping isn't measurable. And
Sure.
then secondly, who are the majority of, what is the majority of the ages in your cessation classes?
Sure. Yes. Okay. So, what was the first one? I went to the cessation because I taught that class last night, so I was thinking about that.
The dose of nicotine in one cigarette.
Yes. So, when you ask a smoker who is in one of our cessation programs, in the Breakaway from Nicotine program, how many cigarettes a day do you smoke? Smokers always know how many cigarettes a day they smoke. Smokers can almost pinpoint specifically when they have each cigarette throughout the day. Plus, with a cigarette, there's a very distinct beginning and end. You light it. You have to go outside, first of all, because if you don't go outside now in North Dakota, people are going to tell you, get outside. So you have to make a move with your body to get outside. You have to light your cigarette, you have to smoke it, and then there is a very distinct end as well. Every cigarette, because of regulation, you absorb approximately 1 milligram of nicotine. That's very different than vaping products, because with vaping products, you can vape continuously throughout the day. And so when we talk to kids about, well, how often are you vaping, or how much, we'll just use Juul for an example, because that's a pod system, so it's extremely easy to measure, or supposedly it should be an easy thing to measure. So if you say, how many pods a day do you smoke, or do you vape, a lot of times they can't tell you, because they're maybe taking a hit off of a friend's vape continuously throughout the day and then passing it on to the next person, which we're all public health, that's communicable disease issue in itself. But it's very different because they're doing it constantly. So we've had someone in our clinic be referred to our Breakaway from Nicotine program for vape products. I went and talked to him, and I said, so how often do you vape? And he said, oh, I don't know, pretty often. And I said, well, like once every hour, or how does that go? And he said, well, no, it's more like once every 15 minutes or so. And I knew he had already had a clinic appointment. And so I said, have you vaped in here? Because I knew he had it. He pulled it out of his pocket. And yep, he had vaped in our clinic. So we are talking, and this is why students are vaping in class. The addiction is so high. They go into nicotine withdrawal. They get extremely agitated, fidgety. They get a headache. They get nauseous. They need to take a hit. And so they're doing that consistently. There isn't a start and an end with vaping. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Right? Okay. And then the second one, as far as ages that we're seeing use these products, we have a very good relationship with the Fargo PD and West Fargo PD as far as letting us know who's getting cited for use or possession of these products. And then they let us know, because then under city ordinance, they have to take our tobacco education class. And what was happening about a year and a half ago, I was having all of these really young kids register, or their parents call me and register, and I didn't have them on my sheet, like expecting them to register, because Fargo PD lets me know, so I know who should be registering. So that wasn't happening. And finally I said, who told you had to come to this class? Well, juvenile court. Well, what is happening is police officers cannot issue a ticket for someone under the age of 14. And so if they catch someone who's under the age of 14, which most kids in middle school are, they have to write what's called a long form, and our school resource officers are so good in this community, and they're catching them, and they are writing the long form, even though it's a bigger pain to do that than write the ticket. So they're writing the long form, and then it actually gets turned into juvenile court. And so we've had to work with juvenile court to get that process, the same process in place that we had with Fargo PD. So now I find out from juvenile court who's going to be registering, and it's those under 14 kids. So
What are the percentages of underage that are in your cessation courses?
So I'd have to look, but I mean, we have more than doubled the number of citations that we got last year from 2017. So 2017 to 2018 doubled. We are on pace. So I just looked at the numbers yesterday. I believe we're at 64 citations January through September. And last year we had 64 citations altogether, January through December. So we have October, November, and December yet of a school year. So it's not like we have summer months coming into this. We have school year months coming into this, and we are already at citation numbers for last year. Citations reported to us. Does that answer your questions?
Yes.
Any other questions that anyone has?
Yeah, real quick. So you said the 1,300 people that got sick and the 30 that died, so there's more than that? Quantify more than that. Is it 150,000 or is it 1,400 people? And I know you can't scientifically say, but you said more.
Did I say
what
it?
is more?
We don't know, because it's not being reported. Like they said, there's no ICD-10 code, so, and it's a diagnosis of exclusion, so there could be called pneumonia, and it just happened to get better because they were in the hospital not vaping, and they, a doctor was treating it as pneumonia instead of a vaping injury. So it's really hard to say that 1,300 is all we've seen of this, because I think it's just so new.
But you can't quantify what that more is?
No.
And if
we
those
won't be able to,
1,300 people, how many people are using legal or undoctored products? Are these coming from people that have been modifying their products?
Well, we know that at least 13% of them were not. So some of it is coming from just the nicotine products that you can buy in a store. 75% were doing some sort of THC oil and or nicotine with it. So.
And that means they're modifying it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. THC is illegal. So.
Yep. And there's nothing to regulate, like in terms of nicotine anyway. There's nothing to regulate. Like in THC, the big problem with legalizing weed is that there's no regulation to it. There's no max. So what used to be really the powerful stuff doesn't matter anymore because it's threefold that.
Used to be 10 to 15% back in the 70s, and now it's 80 to 90 THC, 80-90% THC. So, and the oils are even stronger, and the dab or the wax is even stronger than that. So they could be getting high amounts.
But there's nothing that regulates nicotine. They can put whatever they want into these things.
I believe so. I don't
Yes.
I don't think so.
And that would be a state ordinance that would regulate that. 'Cause that's what I'm trying to do is compare what I've gone through with my weed education. I've luckily never used it. Swear to God, never will. It's just not for me, and that's fine. But it's the level of potency that's getting people in trouble in Colorado and the bigger states that are doing this.
Yep.
So it seems like the states can regulate it, or would it be the federal government that would regulate it?
I really feel with the nicotine products that the FDA should be stepping in and regulating to that extent. I feel like regulation on a state level should be those three things that I talked about, or could potentially be those three things I talked about: raising the price of our tobacco, changing that purchase age to 21. Because if you talk to youth about how are you getting these products, the three in my class yesterday, all of them had 18 or 19-year-old sibling or an 18-year-old, 19-year-old friend. And so if you raise that purchase age to 21, you kind of take that 18 and 19-year-old who's still in high school out of the picture. And that is a promising practice, raising the age to 21. That's not a best practice yet. It's a promising practice. And then the other one would be banning those flavors, because we know flavors are targeting kids. We know that flavors attract everyone who uses them. So those would be kind of what state, local regulation could potentially do. I think federal would have to step in and do that nicotine content, all of that type, put a regulation on that.
Thank you.
Can we make a city ordinance that limits the age to 21?
Yes, we could. Is that something you want to do?
Thoughts from the board.
Are you talking cigarettes or vaping?
Well,
I think that ordinance is already coming, isn't it, or in place?
No.
As
So,
far as age and keeping it, restricting minors from purchasing?
well, minors are already restricted from purchasing to 18 years of age and young. You have to be 18 in order to purchase. So right now, no, we are not working on raising the purchase age to 21. Right now, we're looking at potentially that city ordinance change that Preston talked about that would add a fine to the business initially, because right now, when they fail, if they fail the first time in a year, it's really a slap on the wrist, really. They have to come, they're on probation for a year. This new proposed city ordinance would add a $500 fine initially to that compliance check failure.
I'm going to ask the dumbest question in the world.
Nothing
And
is
folks
dumb.
who know me, I've been hesitant to come along on some of these criticisms of vape industry because I know so many folks who've successfully weaned off cigarettes. And they start with a higher THC, higher content of nicotine, and they go down. When we have 51 people dying per hour in our country from cigarettes, how do we put this conversation in that light so that we're not like diminishing the urgency of this, but we're also not like just throwing our arms up in the air because of that. You know, the tobacco industry is really the issue to a degree.
Oh, for sure.
And yet we're our hands are tied what we can do about that. And so people easily become cynical. Well, like that's nothing compared to
Right.
tobacco.
Correct.
That's my dumb, basic observational question. How do we deal with that PR, public
Right.
perception issue?
so we know that nicotine addiction starts most likely with our youth. And as the largest city and possibly one of the most progressive community in our state, I think it's a good thing to consider raising the age for all tobacco products to 21. I think it sends a strong message that it doesn't matter if it's cigarettes or vaping, it's not safe. It's gonna get any of them out of reach of our high school students or a little bit farther away. And I mean, that's just something I think we should consider our support of that.
And back to comparing the two.
Yes. Would you like me to compare the
I
two?
wouldn't mind hearing your thinking.
Okay, so when I go in
anybody's.
and I talk to youth about tobacco products, I don't just specifically focus on vaping. I talk about tobacco as a whole. So first we talk about cigarettes and how they're still killing almost 500,000 people in our country. And what are we doing about that? Not a whole lot. If influenza was killing 500,000 people in our country every year, we would be, if airplanes were falling out of the sky and 500,000 people were dying a year because of airplane crashes, what would we be doing? We say that. That's basically the exact thing that I say to youth. What would we be doing? Well, we wouldn't be flying anywhere, So yes, there is work that still needs to be done as far as cessation from combustible cigarettes. And we know that the majority of people who are using combustible cigarettes are adults, because our youth cigarette rate, 9 through 12 in North Dakota, the numbers just came out from January 2019 and they're at 8%. So they're under 10%, which is phenomenal. And as tobacco coordinators, we should have thrown ourselves a party because under 10%, Chelsea used to do this. Under 10% is incredible. We did not throw ourselves a party. We actually mourned because the e-cigarette percentage of youth from 2017, which was 20%, jumped to 33% in 2019. And so I think we have to look at, yes, there are still people using tobacco. Yes, we are still losing 500,000 people. I think that's why we have the Breakaway from Nicotine program. That's why we go in with our home health nurses and help people still try and quit, because we haven't given up on them. And they have an incredibly high nicotine addiction and an incredibly dangerous nicotine addiction. But I think we have to look at what is currently addicting our youth, and what is currently addicting our youth is nicotine in a much different form. And they're addicted. they are addicted completely. And we really have gone back in time, because this is exactly what Big Tobacco did with their products decades ago. And they are essentially repeating exactly what they did back then now, and it's been just as successful.
Can I, you mentioned, sorry, you mentioned yesterday that tobacco smoke is a larger molecule
Oh, yeah.
than the liquids. So the liquids get much deeper into the lung, and that's where you get the injuries. Is that correct?
Yeah, and one cigarette isn't gonna kill you, but one vape could, because it could injure your lungs enough to cause great harm.
And I think what you're talking about, John, is the tobacco cessation products that are actually regulated through the FDA.
Yeah.
And that's why you're endorsing those that are actually endorsed by the FDA.
Yeah, and I know, Commissioner Strand, you do refer to people who have been able to quit their smoking, their combustible cigarette smoking by vaping. And then to that, I mean, we have people who come in and say that as well. And to that we say, are you working on quitting vaping? Because you're still inhaling that nicotine into your lungs. You're still inhaling chemicals that we don't know what those long-term health effects are, whether you're a 16-year-old starting it or whether you're 35 or 45 quitting your combustible cigarettes. We don't know what those long-term health effects are. And great, I'm glad when people can quit their combustible cigarettes. It's a victory and it should be celebrated. But if they're using a product that's not FDA approved for cessation, really they should be looking at, well, right now the CDC is saying complete vaping avoidance, but we, up until this lung injury had been reported, we would tell adults, if that's how you're gonna use it, you need to use it and step down, and eventually your goal should be to not be using any of those products at all. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Jen, you still have other?
So I just got back from Nevada about 4 hours ago, and I saw my first sticker on a car that warned you that a car is dangerous. It went literally, it went through it was a California Proposition 18. I don't have my phone, I feel embarrassed. I don't have my phone with me, I'm kind of naked right now. But it had the sticker on the car saying, a car can kill you. People have the right to be dumb. I'm gonna try to one up your stupid statement, right? People have the right to be dumb. I think the struggle is, for me, is right now it's a legal product. I contend that education is the answer because, again, getting back to my Nevada story, weed's legal there. You can walk into any store. I could have bought 15 pounds or whatever the heck I wanted at any THC level I wanted. Probably hurt myself, maybe even killed myself. I did not feel compelled to go buy any kind of gummy bears and brownies and weed things because it's just not what I do.
It's because you're not a teen.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, what I was going to get to next was the education aspect of this, and I always reference the Montana Meth Project. And I don't know if anybody here is familiar with that, but the Montana Meth Project was funded by a guy that cost me a ton of money. He owned Siebel Systems, and I owned a bunch of their stock, and it tanked. Anywho, he got out in time, and what he did with his money was he created the Montana Meth Project, and it is if you want to be inspired by a product or a project, look at it, because its goal is to terrify children. That's how you educate kids. When I was little, I could have gotten drugs and anything I wanted, booze, beer, whatever, not a problem. I don't think that's gonna change. But again, the clique of people I was around said, yeah, why? Let's not do that. So get to Montana Meth, and it's an awesome thing. It's like your first sexual experience will be with that guy in jail, and there'll be nothing you can do about it. Little kids go, wait, what? Yep, that's what's gonna happen. And all of a sudden, meth reduced substantively because it scared kids. So whatever you can do to educate, awesome.
We try. So there are projects like there are national tobacco campaigns like the Truth Initiative, and different Tobacco Free North Dakota or Tobacco Free Kids has some different ads that are out there. And when you talk to kids about, you've all seen them, the ones that where they have to cover the voice box because of, or they have to shave around it or whatever have you. The kids, they report that scare tactic stuff does not work typically. And I'm familiar with the Montana Meth Project, and we looked at it when we were looking at opioid stuff here in our community. I think they're really lucky that it worked the way that it did. I think these products that we're seeing right now, they have, if I could give you my full, like, get on my soapbox presentation on how they have truly marketed to kids, we can't beat big tobacco. Because really what it boils down to is big tobacco is marketing to kids again, because they own the vaping companies. Juul is owned by a big tobacco company. Any vaping product that you get in a convenience store is owned by Big Tobacco. Just turn the box over and look at it. It'll say Winston-Salem, it'll say Altria. Those are all Big Tobacco companies, and they're just repeating what they did years ago, and they have billions of dollars to do it. And so while I agree that the Montana, it's impressive that, and I feel that it's equally impressive that it worked the way it did. Because typically scare tactics are not seen as best practice because they don't always work, especially with youth.
And I think it's evident just from a lot of the policy work that does happen, and when we try and advance policy that is proven to work in this realm, you see Big Tobacco and their lobbyists. I mean, it's not uncommon to see 10 lobbyists at the North Dakota State Capitol for Big Tobacco. Anytime there's any kind of policy, I mean, that's a lot of lobbyists and for small North Dakota, and they can, so they'll go after things that they know is going to hurt their bottom line. And so I think that, you know, the education piece has to come along with some of the policy pieces, because we know time and time again the policy pieces have really cut back on the amount of smokers in the state of North Dakota, and I think it can do the same thing in the realm of vaping as well. I know there's many comments, and I know we're over time, but we can keep going as long as everybody has.
Just very quick, I think that this should be something we should look at from a legislative level for our advocacy, and not wait till the session begins, but have Melissa give her whole presentation to some of our influential lawmakers in the state, and I can help arrange those, because the longer presentation is very compelling, and how damaging it is for our youth. So that's something I think we should look at as a board. I don't know if we need a motion to do that, but maybe that's a consideration down the road.
Other comments?
And I just have one comment, and I just want to point out too that we make kids wait until they're 21 to make dumb decisions with alcohol. And as a person who started smoking in high school, and it's been 13 years that I've quit, but that's where they're starting. And we have kids that are 18, 19 in high school, so I think it's absolutely reasonable to consider pushing that age to 21 like we do with alcohol.
This is such a great discussion.
Yes.
And I'm on the edge of my chair learning, and I could ask questions for hours.
I have the rest of the afternoon. I mean,
I'm so
some of us have to be
appreciative.
back by 2 for the breast cancer event.
I'm so appreciating that we have this ability to have this discussion, but we need to, as a policy board, think of what do we do, or what do we advocate forward, going forward for the greater good of the health of the public that we serve. So be thinking about policy that on the local level. Doesn't mean we'll get it passed, but if the board advises it, at least it sets that stage. Here's some of my burning questions still I'm stuck with. The kid from Fargo North they showed a picture of 2 black market vials of THC products. So it's an issue in this state that if anybody, not everybody, actually the people with medical marijuana cards can get vape products legally that are vape THC products. So there's that legal category of THC vaping, and then there's the whole black market. That topic, I don't know how we address it, but I'm concerned about the black market coming in, and I wish we didn't have it. At least it would address 70-some% of these. It sounds to me, Dr. Lako, like oil might be the topic.
Oil in any foreign substance.
Oil in any form into your lungs. It
Yep,
seems
into your
to me
lungs.
like
It's an irritant, and then it causes inflammation, and then you don't have any oxygen exchange.
So it seems like we're aiming more toward better understanding. So my other dumbest question is, why is this happening now when we've had vape products since?
It's been happening for a
years or
long
so?
time. It's just now being recognized. They had this entity that they were seeing, oh, they don't have an infection, they don't have, any they don't have COPD, they don't have asthma. What are we calling this? And then they found that they were all vaping. And so they started putting it together now. We've had it for a long time, but it's just becoming.
So will this board will there be somebody from public health that will start formulating any potential policy suggestions for us?
Yeah, I think we can have our tobacco team start.
I would recommend that.
Is there any close by cities that have raised the age to 21 that we can? I know there's been a lot of cities that
Anyone
have
in
considered
Minnesota?
None in North Dakota. Minnesota there are some in Minnesota. I believe there's some in Otter Tail County.
Oh, that's nice.
So I mean,
Or I think Otter Tail County itself raised it. Don't quote me on it.
I think at the state level, we will have a hard time making it a state law, but I think that we really could consider it here as the biggest community in North Dakota, and then looking at our Minnesota neighbors and taking steps towards what they're doing.
So I will say, in comment to that, Department of Health, we are under their tobacco grant, and they truly look to us as City of Fargo. What's happening in your community? How are you handling this? What are you guys seeing? Because we typically see it first. And so we kind of figure it out on our own and then let the rest of the state know, this is what's coming, this is what we're seeing. So they really do look to us as far as what's happening and what are you guys gonna do about it?
Chad, go ahead.
We all talk to our peers across the river. What's happening in Clay County? Similar or don't know?
So Clay County has a tobacco person, and I believe he works on a lot of policy because Minnesota's structured different than North Dakota. And so he has had some success with raising age to 21, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who actually if it's specific counties that have been raised it just right across the river, not Clay County that I'm aware of. But there are a lot of municipalities and city entities that have looked at it.
Because ideally, we'd join with our sister city and mirror what.
So a comment to that, our tobacco is already cheaper, so people are coming across the river to purchase ours anyway. So it makes to me, Moorhead's a slam dunk raising the age if their commission's agreeable to it, because nobody's purchasing tobacco over there anyway. And that's just me being honest about the makeup of their ordinances. And so I think, if Fargo raised their age to 21, Minnesota has the high tax, Fargo has the higher age, it's kind of a double whammy when it comes to some of the younger purchasing, if that makes sense.
So I think if we can look at some different types of policy, you brought up the flavor ban as well. I'm not sure if folks have tried to do that within a city or within a county before either, or what that looks like, but it seems like at least some of us are interested in pursuing the 21 piece, because I think that just really helps to...
Yeah. So we could put together some model language for both, actually, and just get that to you guys so that you would kind of be able to look at the differences and what that would look like. We could do that.
I think we need to hit it all, city and state, because it takes our state about 10 years to catch. It does, even with early childhood education. And so we need to hit it at all cylinders, and getting you out in the community and presenting is very powerful. So thank you. You gave 16 presentations last week, right?
Yes.
I mean, getting you in front of people and actually educating are going to make a big difference too. So thank you for what you do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate being able to come and educate on a pretty timely topic that we have been educating on for a couple years now, but it just really has, because it's in the media, it's got a national spotlight on it right now. So now is really the time, I think, to make those changes.
Other questions, comments? Okay, we do have time on the agenda for public comment, if anybody would like to provide any comments there. All right. If not, the next meeting that we have is December 13th. Given the energy that we've started here, that seems like a really long way away. So I don't know if we need to consider a meeting in between there or not to keep some of the momentum. I know there's a lot of media attention and there's obviously a lot of legislation that we could look at and endorse, or if we do that offline, or
Well,
I'm
I
not
think
sure
we
what the
can,
best approach
like,
would be.
have the group get together with Robin and start
Okay.
looking at who, if we would do a group presentation, who would we have for that? So we could do some of that in between.
Okay, okay. All right.
And just as a heads up, the next year's meeting schedule was put in your guys' packets or emailed out, so please look at that, note those. I don't think we unintentionally did any holidays this year, so hopefully we're good.
Any other last minute items? Okay, thanks everyone for coming.